This is China, a country renowned for its rich history and pandas. Chinese civilization has existed for over 5,000 years and has made significant contributions to humanity with inventions like paper and gunpowder. China has a population of over 1.4 billion people and is home to a diverse array of cultures. Despite its remarkable history, modern-day China is a nation facing various opportunities and challenges. In 1978, the country saw dramatic change when Chairman Deng Xiaoping introduced the open door policy. This opened China to foreign trade and investment. New special economic zones were set up, offering low taxes and cheap labor. Investment began pouring in, creating jobs and making exports boom. Made in China has become a common thing all around the world. As such, China has seen the most extraordinary economic growth in history. Economic growth rates have averaged 9% for the past 30 years. Over the past 40 years, nearly 800 million Chinese have been lifted out of poverty. China is now the world's second largest economy behind the USA. More recently, China's economy has hit some hurdles. The economy is now growing at the slowest pace since the 1970s. In 2021, the economy grew 8.1%. In 2022, growth was just 3%. The World Bank believes the Chinese economy will grow 5.6% in 2023. These figures would be marvelous for the UK but represent a slowdown for China. In this video, we will explore the reasons for the decline and its possible solutions. China was battered by its zero-COVID policy. Strict lockdowns were imposed across China's cities, disrupting hundreds of millions of people. Economic activity was thus restricted. Factories and ports were brought to a standstill. Streets were devoid of life. This meant consumption and exports fell. Many industries suffered from lower demand. Eventually, the government ended the zero-COVID policy, but the damage was already done. Much of China's growth has derived from its strong exports. Exporters are suffering as many of China's top trading partners are facing high inflation and rising interest rates. Also, some firms like Apple have relocated production away from China due to fears of supply chain disruptions and higher costs. This causes unemployment and lowers consumption even further. Already much low-cost manufacturing industries have moved to countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam as China loses its wage competitiveness. Employment in manufacturing has been steadily declining since 2013. Tensions with the USA is also damaging confidence in Chinese exporters. Exports in October have fallen 6.4% from a year earlier. October marked the sixth consecutive month of declining exports. China's real estate market is in crisis. For 20 years, Chinese real estate firms boomed as housing demand skyrocketed. However, this growth was funded by copious amounts of debt. In 2020, Chinese authorities began a sweeping crackdown on the real estate sector to curb excessive borrowing and exorbitant house prices. Debt burdens finally caught up to many firms, resulting in bankruptcies and defaults. As a result, confidence has collapsed and housing demand declined significantly. According to the China Real Estate Information Corps, sales from China's top 100 developers dropped by 39.7% in July compared to the same period last year. Business Insider believes China has over 65 million vacant properties, which is enough to house all of France. Many unfinished projects have been put on hold despite already being sold. Capital Economics estimates developers need a whopping $444 billion just to complete halted projects. Country Garden, China's largest developer, reported a $6.7 billion loss in the first half of 2023. The company has missed some of its debt payments and its share prices have tanked as investors fear a default. Evergrande, another major developer, racked up $300 billion in debt and has since filed for bankruptcy. The company reported losses of $81 billion from 2021 to 2022. As many Chinese households bought into the property bubble, many lost their life savings and are facing debt challenges. Many consumers who bought unfinished homes have stopped mortgage payments. According to the S&P 500 Global, the boycotted payments could be worth about $145 billion. Homeowners have seen their asset values vanish. A negative wealth effect has ensued. This is where consumers reduce their spending when they perceive a fall in wealth. The wider economy could face repercussions, especially the banking sector, as more firms default on their debts. This could lead to a credit crunch whereby access to credit is unreachable. This will severely dampen consumption and investment in the economy. Much of China's economy was heavily dependent on real estate. Some economists believe all real estate output plus supply chains makes up around 30% of total GDP. In 2021, construction employed almost 53 million workers. 70% of all household wealth in China is tied up with real estate. Selling land to developers is also a key revenue source for many local governments in China. Public sector revenues are set to lose 3.6 trillion yuan. To help, the government has offered some tax relief to developers and home buyers have been given financial aid as well. The central bank has also cut interest rates to make the cost of borrowing cheaper. However, given the importance of the real estate sector, this is but a drop in the ocean. China is also grappling with rising debts. Local governments in China have racked up $12.77 trillion in debt. If these debts reach a breaking point, austerity measures or even defaults could happen. These could come in the form of public sector cuts or higher taxes. This would cause immense damage to consumers as living standards and real incomes fall. China's national debt to GDP ratio is currently around 77%. This number has almost doubled since 2014. National and local government debt combined would surpass 200% of China's GDP. Also, many state-owned businesses such as the China Railway Corporation have leveraged significant debt. Total state corporation debt amounts to $15.6 trillion. JP Morgan Chase believes that overall debt within China, which includes households, businesses, and the government, has reached 282% of the country's GDP. To put that into perspective, the USA's overall debt lies at 257%. In August, the government announced a $137 billion stimulus to fund infrastructure projects and alleviate some local government debt. But more money will be needed. Over the past year, many European nations have faced high inflation sparking cost of living crises. In China, the complete opposite is true as it tackles deflation. Deflation is typically a sign of a struggling economy as general price levels begin to fall. Persistent deflation could crush economic growth as consumption and investment remain low. This could lead to a negative multiplier effect whereby firms lay off their staff and average incomes fall further. International firms operating in China could face a drop in revenues. Companies such as Apple and Volkswagen rely on China for much of their sales. Firms could leave the Chinese market if sales continue to fall, creating unemployment. Demographic changes are also taking a toll on China. In 1980, China introduced its infamous one-child policy to lower population growth. This short-sighted measure has come back to haunt China as its population is declining. Despite a new three-child policy, birth rates remain extremely low. In fact, China's population is expected to halve by 2100. Moreover, the population is rapidly aging. Under Chinese tradition, younger generations are expected to take care of the old. However, this model is no longer sustainable. An aging workforce puts further strain on government finances. Spending on healthcare and pensions is likely to increase. It also invokes an opportunity cost as less money can be allocated towards development. The Chinese Academy of Social Sciences believes the main state pension fund could run out of money by 2035. To combat this, the retirement age is being raised. Incentives are being given to increase the birth rate through cash subsidies and generous paid holidays for working couples. China is also suffering from a brain drain. This is where skilled workers leave the country. Many young workers, especially in the tech sector, are leaving China. President Xi Jinping began a crackdown on the tech sector which severely crippled the industry, making tens of thousands unemployed. People are leaving due to poor economic conditions, the political context, and the zero-COVID policy. This will lead to labor shortages. Thus, Chinese firms may see their productivity fall and become less cost-efficient. Innovation and enterprise levels is likely to fall as many entrepreneurs also leave. The government also collects less tax revenue. According to Henley and Partners, in 2022, China saw a net exodus of 10,800 high-net-worth individuals. Another 13,500 are expected to leave this year. These people all have a personal fortune of over $1 million. A brain drain also means China is losing a lot of consumer spending, adding to the deflation pressures. China is also tackling a youth unemployment crisis. The figure reached a record high of 21.3% in June. This represents a loss of productivity for the economy. Also, extended periods out of work could create health issues like stress and anxiety. Some may even turn to crime. Youth unemployment typically affects the most disadvantaged groups in society. Therefore, social mobility will be harder to achieve, meaning people stay stuck in a cycle of poverty. China is already blighted by severe income and wealth inequality. Inequality leads to social issues such as crime and deprivation. The top 10% of earners take home over 80,000 euros a year, whereas the bottom 50% on average earn around 5,000 euros a year. In 2020, former Chinese Premier Li Keqiang revealed that 600 million Chinese have an income of just 1,000 yuan a month. That equates to just above £113. Extreme regional inequalities also exist in China. The vast majority of economic growth has been concentrated in cities and the eastern provinces. Rural areas do not enjoy the same privileges as urban ones. Social security, healthcare, and education are poorly funded. Climate change is also harming the economy. Economic growth over the past few decades has done irreversible damage to the local environment. China is the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Air pollution is responsible for 2 million deaths a year in China. As we've covered in a previous video, global warming means extreme weather events increase in frequency and intensity. In the summer of 2011, there were 6 to 8 monthly floods listed in China. In 2022, more than 130 floods were recorded in July and 82 in August. This year, China has been hit with devastating heat waves and floods. In Heilongjiang province, the grain belt of China, floods have wrecked 41,600 hectares of farmland, damaged almost 24,000 homes, and displaced over 187,000 people. Droughts in Sichuan province caused energy rationing and blackouts as the region heavily relies on hydropower for its electricity. Over 80% of total power production in Sichuan is derived from hydropower. Factories have been ordered to close or curb hours in order to preserve electricity for households. Energy-intensive industries faced crippling losses. China's Statistics Bureau reported that profits in the iron and steel industry fell by more than 80% in the first 7 months of 2022, compared to the same period in 2021. Much of China's current economic woes is derived from its economic model. Economic growth in the past few decades has been spurred by investment and government spending. China's addiction to building is no longer a sustainable way to increase output. Thus, structural changes will be needed to boost consumption in the economy. Household consumption as a percentage of GDP in China is amongst the lowest in the world. In contrast, Western economies are primarily driven by consumption. Institutional reforms and diversification will be needed to create prosperity. More needs to be done to tackle poverty and shrink inequality if China wants to transition to a high-income country. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe for more compelling content. As always, we appreciate your support and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, 再见.